Hi, welcome to the Armed Guardian Podcast, Season 1, Episode 4. Today, David and I will be talking with Brian Eastridge of Eastridge Training and Consulting, LLC. Our topic for today's podcast will be revolvers. Are they still a valid concealed carry weapon for concealed carry in the rise of semi-automatics? So sit back, enjoy, and listen to today's podcast, and here we go. Hi, welcome to the Armed Guardian Podcast. I'm your host, Brian, and we have David here, and we've got a guest today that a topic that some people say is a little outdated for concealed carriers with the advent of semi-automatics. Brian Eastridge, he's here to join us and talk to us about revolvers and are they still valid for the concealed carrier? How you doing, Brian?
You're doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. So, who is Brian Eastridge and what do you do?
Well, I wear a number of hats. Let's see. I guess the main gig I have is I'm co-owner of EDC Belt Company. So we make a concealed carry belt. It's kind of purpose built for the armed citizen. It's reinforced where it needs to be, and it's nice and comfy where it should be. So that was a project of mine that was born out of years of wearing a Sam Browne duty belt and chronic sciatica and all those things. And I figured out after a vacation that it really wasn't my duty belt that was causing all those problems. It was a particular concealed carry belt. So I started that in 2019, sell them through our website, through LangdonTactical.com. Ernest and Amy sell them, and then Concealed Carry Inc. sells them as well. So, yeah, that's kind of my main gig. And then I have another LLC. It's Eastridge Training and Consulting. I do some firearms industry consulting at times, do some open enrollment training, very little anymore. I just don't have time. I do enjoy it, but the last couple of years, I've just haven't had the time to do it. So I mainly teach it like conference type stuff, and then I'll do one or two open enrollments a year. But teaching at like the Guardian Nation conference, and then the Pat Rogers Memorial Revolver Roundup at Gunsight, I teach there every year, and okay. Yeah, that's a fun one if you get a chance. I think there's like 5 or 6 spots left for that this year.
Wow.
And it's in November. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving, and it's a great hang. And it's just learn a lot of revolver history and talk to some armed professionals that have carried them and how they train with them, that whole 9 yards. Okay. And then I have the off-duty, on-duty podcast, and this time of year, that one kind of slows down because this is kind of the busy season through about December. So I try to get one out a month. Sometimes I get one out every 2 weeks. A lot of good guests on there. Everybody from Rob Latham to Haney McMood to Daryl Bulkey's been on a bunch, and Eric Gelhaus, some other guys that Lee Weems has been on a couple of times, our mutual buddy. And that's kind of it. Now that I've retired from law enforcement, I seem to be busier than I ever was when I was a cop. So
yeah, always works out like that.
Everybody told me that, and I was like, nah, I'm going to work like 2-3 days a week. And then, man, my phone started ringing and it hadn't stopped. So
yeah, I like your podcast, the Armed On Duty, Off Duty, because you incorporate the view from both worlds, the law enforcement perspective and then the concealed carriers perspective. So I really like that, and I think I got David in love with it also.
Cool.
Recommended it to him, and a good one. Like what you do on that.
Well, it was when that was hashed, the producers and I talked about it, and they said, we want you to do the cop and concealed carrier perspective. And I said, I can sum that up in like 2 sentences. Like, citizens aren't under any obligation to put handcuffs on anybody.
Right.
Ta-da, done, and it's like, no, come on. But anyway, that was, and that's been going I was 2 years in July. So
I remember it was 2 or 3. So
yeah, 2 years ago, July. So
all right. Well, we'll go ahead and jump into some of our topic questions that we have here. One thing I get people coming, a lot of the classes that I teach, a lot of people bring, of course, the favorite is the semi-automatic pistol, and I get why it's the favorite. The multiple, more rounds in the revolver and things like that. But I think revolvers still have a valid primary concern for the concealed carrier as a primary weapon to carry. And there are some issues that with the revolver that gender and age and stuff like that I know play a part in, but are revolvers still valid for CCW in the world of semi-automatics?
under some circumstances, I think they kind of pay an advantage.
Right.
But I think they're a little more, I don't want to say niche, but they kind of fit two things. For carrying them every day, they're kind of niche. For a fire extinguisher at home,
yeah,
they fit that role so well.
Right.
And that's really where I think they live until you get to a certain point in training and understanding of methodologies that you can really take an advantage from them.
Right. Yeah, I know one of the things that I see, and with the industry, I'll see a lot of the elderly that will come to classes, and the gun shops or pawn shops, hey, you're just looking for something to throw in a purse or a nightstand, and a revolver is simple. You just aim and press the trigger or pull the trigger, as they usually say. But I've had people come that have a problem with that 12-pound trigger press on the double action, and you don't really want them to carry or present it in a single action mode unless they really know what they're doing, because of the potential for negligent discharge. So that's one of my concerns with I don't want to cover the gun industry as a whole, but for the ones that are looking to kind of push off stuff that don't really invest the time into fitting the gun to the carrier or the person that's wanting to buy it. And, but I've also had some issues with some of I won't name the brand, but some of the semi-autos that have the grip safety for elderly people where they just can't grip the gun hard enough to deactivate that safety to fire the semi-automatic. So it's kind of I think a double-edged sword, but I think revolvers are a good option, definitely for a backup if you decide you want to carry a backup. And then for the home defense, I think that it really fits in well with them.
Yeah, and I think the industry as a whole, there are very few like point of sale. You go above that to distributor level, they're not dealing with the customer. You
Right.
go above that to the manufacturers, they have a pretty good understanding of like what makes revolvers great. Unfortunately, revolvers were born out of a time when skilled labor was cheap and engineering was expensive. And now that role has kind of flipped, where, the engineering side of the house, SolidWorks, man, that's the program everybody's using to design stuff nowadays. And it's a lot more attainable than it was in 1909 and prior.
Right.
But skilled labor in that era was cheap. I have a real love for pre-1939 revolvers, and they're works of art, but somebody was making, $1 an hour to build those, or 50 cents an hour.
Right.
Those days are gone. But your end gun shop salespeople don't really have a good idea, because let's face it, the people that are working those roles, unless it's, a part-time gig or, somebody that's older, retired and wants a job. They're typically not very high paying jobs, and they're typically staffed by people that grew up with the Glock 19.
Right.
And that's not a knock at that generation or that end user. And there are some exceptions to that. I mean, there's exceptions to everything. But a lot of the younger generation now, you hand them a revolver and they look at it like a Rubik's Cube. And I'm actually kind of in the young category for being somebody that has a pretty deep understanding of revolvers. So that's kind of my 2 cents as to why those wires get crossed up. And I've had some really highly respected instructors that are older than me that, I say, hey, you got any revolvers? You want to have a wheel gun day? I don't really understand revolver. I've never shot them.
Right.
And these are people in their 50s, and it's like, oh man. And unless you were in law enforcement, the semi-auto pistol, I mean, even the military adopted it back in the teens. So it's, the LE world was slow to get on the auto bus, but that's been like the agency I worked for transitioned to autos in 1990. 1990 was quite a long time ago now.
Yeah.
So 30 some years ago.
Yeah. And something too, people, understanding revolvers are the different frame sizes, like the J frame, the L frame, the N frame and stuff. And just what's the difference in them? Because, someone like me or a person with a large hand, a J frame revolver can be a little bit of a challenge to handle compared to the N frame and K and L frame models.
Yeah, but the benefit you have is a wide variety of stock options, right? I'm not talking about S&P 500. I'm talking about like the actual stocks on the gun, right? The grips. You can tailor a revolver way, way more than you can tailor a semi-auto. A semi-auto, you've got the options of burn it with a soldering iron or slap tape on it, right?
Yeah.
Some of the newer modern semi-autos, they like the HK VP9 has a lot of modularity to it, but even that degree of modularity doesn't really change the reach to the trigger, which is the critical one.
Right.
And J frames, to me, they fit a really specific role, and it's one that most people in training will not explore because, let's face it, there's only maybe 15,000 people in the whole United States that, quote, go take training above, something very basic. So,
right. David, you want to ask the next question?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, Brian. So with all the many different calibers out there for revolvers, I know a lot of people are using them now for hunting and many different areas of the firearms world. Which one would you recommend, or what do you like, or maybe a few of them?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Right to Bear is the leading self-defense legal protection you can count on if the moment comes to defend yourself or your families. Right to Bear provides the legal representation, expert witnesses, gun replacement, and even a 24-hour hotline for peace of mind exactly when you need it most. Sign up at protectwithbear.com and use promo code BTT to get 10% off. With Right to Bear, you'll never defend your freedoms alone again. Join now with the promo code BTT at protectwithbear.com.
Well, for small and medium frame revolvers, if you're going to buy a revolver today, just buy a 38 special. There's no need to shoot 357 Magnum unless you're hunting bears or something. 357 is just punishing. 38 special, you can practice with a lighter downloaded cartridge. You can carry a plus P, but if you're going to get a barrel length below like 3 inches, just get standard velocity 38 special. There's really no benefit going anything hotter than that if you're going below 3-inch barrels. But 38 to me is probably the most versatile that's out there, and that's Mainly because you have a wide variety. You can go a very light bullet very fast with very low recoil, or you can go a medium bullet with medium recoil, or you can go a really heavy bullet and hurt yourself. I mean, it's just, and all points in between. Ammunition wise, 38 special is probably the most affordable, and it's the easiest to find versus, 44 mag, 44 special, 32 H&R, stuff like that. But yeah, 38 special. And I tell people, if you've got an interest in revolvers, they made something like 12 million K-frame Model 10s and M&Ps, which is your, medium frame, K-frame, Smith & Wesson specifically. They made them since 1899. They're in there's a used one in every gun shop in America. They can typically be had for $500 or less dollars. And just if that's what you want to learn, then, Model 64, Model 10, Model 13s are 357 mag chambered. The reason I discourage people from going and jumping in the 357 mag pool is if you go to your local gun shop and the salesman that looks at a revolver like a Rubik's Cube sees 357 Magnum on the side, what ammunition is he going to try to sell you? 357 mag, right? And you're going to shoot it 6 times and go, I'm never touching that again. Versus if you say, I want a 38 special, and the salesman says, oh, well, here's a 357 mag and you can shoot either one. Well, now you're talking to somebody that's at least somewhat informed. But yeah, I really recommend get a medium frame 38 special and invest the time there. Learn it there. And you can go smaller or larger from there, right? Make sense?
Yes, sir. And that kind of leads me to I guess when you mentioned the different sizes as far as the barrel length. I know I've seen snub nose up to 8-inch, and there may be even some bigger. I'm not sure. I'm not as familiar with revolvers as probably you are. But do you recommend one size in particular? Are there different situations where one size might be better? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So for the quasi-armed professional, a 3-inch or a 3.5-inch barrel, that is like the gunfighter length, right? That's, I've got like 5 3-inch Model 10s and some in-frame 27s that are 3.5-inch because they're the perfect balance, and you get a full length ejector rod. And people are like, what do you mean by that? Well, if you go to a snub, the rod is not long enough to fully extract the cartridges. So a 3-inch gun, you can fully unseat the spent cartridges, which is important if you're going to carry that in a quasi-professional manner. The pocket snub is one of my favorites. Got a couple of friends that's saved their bacon. And the ability is my good friend Daryl Bulkey has kind of coined a term with a snub revolver in a pocket holster, on your strong side. You can casually stand there and not alarm anybody and have your hand fully in a firing grip on a gun that you can deliver in under a second. And you may have seen the videos. Daryl and me and a guy named Rhett Niemeyer, we've all demoed that. And the funny part of that is, for the semi-auto community that spends an inordinate amount of time trying to get below a sub-second draw to first shot, with moving pieces and all that, it's like we can throw a sucker punch from the pocket and be there in about a half second. And I'm not saying that's a great primary role, but Daryl coined it as covered, low, ready. So everything's concealed and covered, but I'm ready to act. And it doesn't look socially offensive to people if you're standing there with your hand in your pocket. So I think that's a really valid method. And for that, you need that 2-inch or less barrel, and generally a pretty light revolver, which are not the most pleasant to shoot. But fortunately, in that format, what seems to be the best functioning ammo is either your lead semi-wad cutter at standard velocity or your 148 grain target wad cutter. And there's some really good companies out there that are making very consistent ammo that's loaded just a touch above what match ammo would be loaded for. Like Curtis Shipley at GA Arms makes a wadcutter that'll run 750 feet per second out of an 1 7/8 inch Smith & Wesson J-frame. And that round is purpose built as a defensive round. And everything we see at Flat works. It's like, it's solid. And you can, if you're a reloader, you can kind of mimic that and download it a little bit and be easier on your wrists and everything else. So that's kind of the 2 barrel lengths I recommend. But like I said, if you're just starting out on a revolver, a 4-inch old, I call them the old cop service guns, a 4-inch Model 10, 64, 65, Ruger GP, something like that. Yeah, I mean, they're still reasonably affordable, and a 4-inch barrel you can do just about anything with. So,
yeah, I think that revolvers, if you do carry for concealed, it takes a lot more watching. Situational awareness, in my opinion, is that coming from looking back at my military career, whenever I was in the M16A1, which was a full automatic version. And then they decided, hey, we're going to go to the 3-round burst model and get rid of the full auto to get rid of the spray and pray. I see that kind of in the atmosphere of the semi-auto and the revolver debate or topic, that revolvers, you have to be more intent specific on your target. It takes a little bit more practice with it, but it eliminates that I've got 15 rounds, I'm just going to pull the trigger and and spray and pray, as we used to call it in the military. I just think the revolver, if you practice with it, you can actually reload fairly quickly with a speed loader or strip loader. Yeah, your semi-autos are going to load a little bit more. You're going to have more rounds, but it's going to make you more intent on focusing on your sight picture and target than just yanking on that trigger in a stress situation and unloading 15 rounds that will hit who knows where. What you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if you look at the armed citizen defense side, what do we constantly hear? The typical defensive shooting is what? 3 rounds, 3 yards, in 3 seconds, right? Yeah. That's about by the time the second, 1,000, 2,000, pretty much the victor is determined in that. So capacity in that particular instance, to me, you can give a little bit of that for the ability to rapidly deploy it and the ability to consistently rapidly deploy it. One of the things I like to do, and I got this from Wayne Dobbs, is when I'm briefing a class, I have everybody, look around at everybody. We are at pistol gunfight distance, just a little over an arm's length, right?
Yeah.
For the typical concealed carry role. Like right. Pistol fight distance is conversation distance. So a revolver can really be deployed quickly in that without having to move cover garments and do a whole lot else. You can deploy it pretty rapidly. So that for me is where it takes a huge benefit. And I have the absolute fastest revolver reload that you can time, and it's called haul another revolver out and don't worry about reloading the first one. Right. And that's another place that revolvers kind of hold a special meaning to me, is there is no magazine. So, well, there is technically, but as far as capacity, get another revolver, and the ability to carry 2, say 1 in each front pocket, or 1 in a jacket pocket and 1 in a pants pocket. You have some, you have some flexibility there to, and an added layer of safety with that longer, heavier trigger pull. It's pretty deliberate to make one of those go off. So having two of them on your person is a little, even, I won't say less to manage, but it's easier to manage than most people would think.
And I have a question to go along with what you just said, Brian.
Yeah.
You talked about carrying two revolvers. So would you think that that would be a better way to go than maybe carrying a revolver and speed loaders? I guess if so, then, kind of your thoughts on that?
So if I'm going to, let's say I'm going to a place that's maybe capacity unfriendly, a state that even with Leosa, there might be some question as to, well, can I have a 10-round magazine or an 8-round magazine or this or that, or I'm going somewhere that my apparel will not allow me to put on a semi-auto pistol and conceal it very well. And I know you're going to get hate mail. Well, buy this holster and you can do whatever. My response to that is, okay, gunfighter, you do you. But if I've got to wear like a sport jacket, something like that, yeah, I can strong side conceal that fairly well. But what happens when my split sport jacket, my Colt Commander pops out of the back of it? Does that offend people that are around you and maybe get you asked to leave wherever you're, right? So if I can drop a revolver in a pocket and then drop another revolver in a jacket pocket, right? It's pretty invisible, especially with a compact revolver. And then if the need arises for a reload, I have another delivery system for it. And if I've got a speed strip or two, I mean, I'm sorry, if you're hauling two revolvers out, you have probably selected where your life is taking you poorly, right? Yeah. If you're going to revolver number 2, you might want to think about what restaurant you're going to eat at or something like, right. Is it really worth it? But typically when I carry one, I'll carry, like I've got an older model 13 and an appendix rig from JM, and then I'll carry a J-frame in my pocket or some type of snub in my pocket or Ruger LCR. And then I've generally got a speed strip, an 8-round speed strip that's spaced 2.46. So I can reload either gun if I needed to. Now, granted, that's a pretty niche thing. That's a pretty low or I won't say low priority, but low in the law of averages. Right. But, and generally if I can appendix carry a revolver, I could probably appendix carry an auto, but I still like to have a revolver in the pocket because, man, lifting your shirt up and hauling a semi-auto out kind of gets people's attention versus, man, I may not need to use this, but at least I got my hand on it and I'm ready to. Yeah. That's to me is where it pays huge dividends. So hope I answered that for you.
Yes, sir. So another question I've got. So with all the, now you got the hammerless revolvers out there. I know it's not necessarily traditional, but a lot of people I see are going to those. I see them a lot in gun stores. What's your thoughts on those? Would you even recommend them? What are their I guess areas where they might be more useful than a traditional hammered revolver?
Most of the guns that I carry have an enclosed, small ones have an enclosed shrouded hammer or a concealed hammer. And that's 2 reasons. 1, it's not going to snag on anything. And 2, you're not going to get debris into the gun. I do have a Bodyguard Model 49 there that I don't carry. It sits 401k gun, right? And they have a hammer that's exposed in between the shroud of the frame. I really prefer for business guns formats like the Smith 442, 642 or the Ruger LCR that's completely sealed up, because Brian's probably been at a police range when they inspect your gun and somebody gets an air hose out and you blow about 4 pounds of pocket lint out of them. It's a thing, but also they're pretty snag proof. So I like that particular format on guns that have a hammer spur that are business guns. And not 401k guns, I prefer to have the hammer spur cut. And for two reasons. One, snag, right? Unless it's a collector's piece, right? But you're just showing off at the little barbecue or whatever. But make them double action only. And the reason I say that is then there is no question that if you fired the gun, it was deliberate.
Right.
Right. And you're going to immediately eliminate well, he cocked the gun and didn't mean to fire it, or she cocked the gun and it had a hair trigger. Well, if you disable the single action ability, that there was 14 pounds of reasoning behind why I fired, or 12 pounds or whatever it is of reason and time to think this over as I'm pressing it. So
right.
I'm a proponent of on revolvers, double action only. There's really no reason to shoot them single action.
Right. Yeah. And if you buy a second hand or get one handed down, I've seen people that don't know the gun, don't know, especially if it's been handed down or bought at a pawn shop or something, used it. They don't know any type of trigger work that's been done on it or any specialty work. And if they are, expect that long, heavy double action trigger pull, or that even that lighter single action pull, if they've had it that shaved down to make it lighter. I was at the gun range the other day with a buddy of mine, and he had a rifle that he had built himself, and he said, "Hey, it's safe and everything, but just press the trigger on this thing." I went over there. He worked the bolt. I put my finger. I just barely touched the trigger, and bam. And I said, "Wow, that's a real sensitive." I couldn't. That's had to be a specialty gun just for him to bullseye or shoot or something like that. But I'm not a proponent myself, really, of getting a whole lot of specialty work, because then you open yourself up for a lot of liability if you are involved in something, to bring in questions, and we don't want that in a self-defense incident.
Yeah, I subscribe to on a pistol, your trigger should weigh a minimum of double what that gun weighs. That's just kind of an easy rule, right? If it's fully loaded and it weighs 2.5 pounds, we want to have a 4.5 to 5.5 pound trigger. And there is some companies in the industry that don't subscribe to that, but to each his own. That's why, and typically, I carry in retirement, the gun I probably carry the most is a Glock 42 380, and it's got a front sight that's been replaced. That's it. And it's got about a 4.5, 5 pound trigger. And, I don't have any issue ringing steel at 50 yards with it if I need to. It's just, I'm not a real proponent of business guns, lightning triggers and putting the super duper competition match, this, that, and the other. It's like, keep it simple. If nothing else, for your own safety. So you've got a little extra layer of forgiveness if you do something sort of wrong. Right.
Right.
And that's the thing with revolvers is, would you carry a semi-auto with a 4 pound trigger in your pocket with no holster? Everybody look at you like it's ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
Could you throw a revolver in an empty pocket if you went to go get your mail and pretty well be assured that as long as there's nothing else in there, you're reasonably safe doing so?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. To me, the only thing, like you were talking about hammer spurs, the only thing a hammer spur is good for is to ease the hammer back a little bit and spin the cylinder and make sure I don't have a high primer. That's about it.
That pretty much answered the next question I had. But with that being said, so you would never, no, that's great. With that being said, so you never see a place where you would actually need a single action trigger pull.
Just one, if you're carrying a Ruger Vaquero or a Ruger Red Hawk or Black Hawk or something like that, that's single action only, then you absolutely have to. But Colt single action army, but as the name implies, it's but that they're, I don't see people carrying those for defensive work outside of like, hikers in Montana and Alaska and things like that, where having a gun with the hammer down that's physically unable to fire if it's, getting knocked around in a pack or something. But even there, I mean, look at the Ruger Alaskan series, they named it after the place, and they're heavy bore, large caliber. But as far as single action shooting, on a double action revolver, I don't see a need for it. There might, maybe if you had a double action silhouette gun built up or something, but in the defensive context, it's pretty well completely unnecessary. I kind of think if somebody's far enough away that you need to make a precision shot with a revolver in the armed citizen context, that means they're far enough away you could probably run, right?
Yes, sir.
That's now, I mean, there's exceptions to everything. Could you end up in some scenario where that might be necessary? Yes, but distance equals time. So there's, there's just not a lot I can see where there's a benefit to it. And I see a lot more negatives on that. Number one being typically a double action revolver, if you cock it and put it in a single action mode, will not shoot to the same place it will double action, or vice versa.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of unnecessary.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I agree with that.
What kind of drills do you kind of encourage or think a revolver carrying person should practice with? Just kind of be proficient for both accuracy as well as defensive shooting. What are some drills that you think that they should practice on?
I like Justin Dial's 5-yard roundup. Now you're going to have to reload in there, but everything's a 2.5 second par time.
Okay.
And it's 1 from the holster in 2.5. 4 rounds from a low ready in 2.5 seconds. And then with a 5-shot revolver, 6, you're going to need to reload. And then it's 3 shots strong hand only, 3 shots off gun hand only. And all of those phases are 2.5 seconds. So it's 10 rounds, 2.5. You set a timer to a 2.5 second par time. That's a really good one. If you're new at a revolver, I really like, if it's not a rimfire, what Larry Mudgett calls skip loading, which is put a round in it, spin the cylinder, and then close it. Don't whip it closed. That'll break it. But close it and roll through the trigger, open the cylinder, spin the cylinder, close it, roll through the trigger, and get into the press trigger or roll the trigger and don't move the gun. And then when you fire a shot, okay, now I open the cylinder, I put another cartridge in, spin it to where I've got 4 empties or 5 empties in it and 1 live round, and then work up to where I can roll through that cylinder. And when the shot goes, it should go to its intended location. That'll get you into the discipline of rolling a revolver trigger and not staging it. That's just a practice exercise, and I'm giving that away for my class at Big Tex Ordnance in a couple weeks here. Oops. No, but that's how I like to practice with them. You remember the military's dime washer drill?
Yeah. You
can start out with a fired case or with an empty gun and roll the revolver trigger and try to keep something on the front side or on the barrel or something to that effect. That's a really good training method. There's the super snubby test, which I ran this 2 days ago with the new Kimber K6 ultralight, whatever, 6-shot hammerless revolver. And I got to say, I might have to get one of those, but But it's, Greg Ellifritz just posted it. It's 10 yards. It's 5 rounds in 12 seconds. You go to 5 yards, you're shooting freestyle 2-handed on the gun. It's 5 rounds in 5 seconds. And then you go strong hand only at 3 yards, and it's 5 rounds in 3 seconds. I do, if I'm not mistaken, 3.5. It's kind of a modification of the hit super test. With 5-round and 6-round guns, I like to set par times at about 1 shot per second. Once you get proficient, before that, I like 1 round every 2 seconds, something like that. But yeah, like there's a ton of revolver exercises out there. Unfortunately, a lot of them are holdovers from police training, where it's a 50-round qualification session, and it's like, break some pieces of that up. And I tend to not practice reloads under time with a revolver, because, like I said, my answer is haul another revolver out. Right? That's the most reliable reload there is for a revolver. Speed strips, speed loaders. I prefer speed strips, but mainly because they take up less space, so easier to hide. But
yeah, those speed loaders kind of bulge out a little bit if you're carrying it in a pocket and stuff, especially if you're carrying a typical jean pocket instead of a jacket or something like that.
Yeah, and if I'm wearing a jacket during the wintertime, I'll carry speed loaders in a jacket pocket on the same side as the gun. And then I'll carry maybe 1 or 2 on the other side. Just so you've got the flexibility. But I typically carry HKS or Comp 2 speed loaders.
Yeah.
So
I'm partial to the HKS, coming from the law enforcement side. That's typically what we typically carried where I worked at when I carried a revolver. So yeah, I was listening a drill that I kind of adapted, and I was listening to you and Wayne talking a couple weeks ago on the podcast with the favorite drills that law enforcement have, and I've kind of adopted one that I like that's good for both semi-auto and revolver, and it's the Todd Green's 26662 drill. But I run it twice and run it as a reload. So I'll put in 5. If it's in a semi-auto, I'll put 5 rounds in each magazine and shoot the drill, reload, and then shoot the drill again, just to incorporate working that reload. And then also doing it in a revolver, 5 rounds. That's typically what most of your revolvers are capable of, unless you have a larger frame 6-round cylinder. But you got your 5 rounds that you can fire off and then reload how you're reloading, whether it's strips or speed loaders, and fire it again. And then you got that the target acquisition and the little bit of movement that you're doing from the 2-inch to the 6-inch circle. And that's one that I've practiced quite a bit. And even in my classes, whenever I do advanced, I really push that drill, just because it incorporates so many things in one drill. Yeah.
There's tons of good revolver exercises. And I subscribe to the Range Master newsletter and Greg Ellifritz, active response training, his knowledge dump, get on his email list. And, he does a weekend knowledge dump every weekend. And there's something on revolvers in there. There's a Facebook post or an exercise or an article or something that he links to, or he wrote up one on the super snubby test here a while back. And that's another, which unfortunately I don't have it in front of me, and I don't shoot it very often, unless it's a revolver day. And then I typically pull it up on my phone, and I was looking, I couldn't find the link. I can't, it's the par times. Everything's in groups of 5, and it's a 15-round deal. But that one is a really good barometer of skill on a B8 repair center. Tends to be one of my favorites because it's pretty easily scoreable, and it's challenging, but at the same time, it'll tell you kind of where you're at with shooting a revolver. Pretty quick.
Okay.
So, and that super snubby doesn't involve any reloads, but it's a good balance of speed and accuracy, and accuracy is king, regardless of what anybody tells you. It's, right. Speed's all good, but accuracy is what finishes fights and what stops bad people from doing bad things. So,
yeah, got to hit your target to stop the threat.
Not only that, you got to hit it in the right spot.
Right.
Handguns, a 38 special that's .357 is about the size of a what is it? 355, 356, 357. It's like a drill bit, man. It's just going to punch a hole. All the hollow point technology in the world doesn't do you a thing if you shoot somebody in the ankle.
Right.
So, the B8 Repair Center, if you haven't heard on the podcast before, there's one just over my right shoulder right there. That's about the size of the target. Daryl Bulkey says a grapefruit or a large orange in the high center chest is about where you need to be all the time.
Right.
Even IPSC A zones are a little too forgiving on the elevation side. It kind of extends down there into, Wayne calls it the goodles, right? And I've interviewed a lot of gut shot felons, a lot of them, and it's a lot of times it wasn't even a fight stopper. So
right.
That B8 Repair Center, the black of that B8 Repair Center is just, to me, is like the perfect target. I've been on that for 5 or 6 years. It really holds you accountable. So I do 99% of my practice on one of those right there. So,
okay. Well, if somebody wanted to reach out to Brian or things that you're involved in, how would they, where would they look, and how would they contact you or the things that you're involved?
Well, I'm on the Facebooks. My page is private, but EDC Belt Company, we have a Facebook page, and I monitor all the correspondence there. If you ping an email there, it pings to me. So that's one way. I do most of my class. If I'm going to do a class advertisement, it goes out there as well. The Off Duty, On Duty podcast, again, if you ping that one for a question or something, that goes to me. I forgot to mention in the pre-show, or I actually have a Patreon page. That was the hat I couldn't remember. For $3 a month, I do everything from training tips to how to take apart and maintain your revolvers. Some custom work. I do some 1911 stuff because that's kind of on the rise again. And there's a lot of people that forgot it's 112-year-old technology. You need to learn how to maintain it.
Yep.
It's the equivalent of driving a stick shift, Then if you message me there, like I said, I have to charge something for that because it's pretty time consuming, but $3 a month. And I even do it where if you want to send in a request, I'll dig something up. Off Duty, On Duty, EDC Built Company, Patreon. And that's pretty much it. I took down my training page because I just wasn't doing much with it. And it was just an extra layer. And then on Instagram, I am Brian with a Y, not I, all one word _ And it's that one I post. I don't do much training stuff on that one. It's just post up pictures of, where I've been and what we're doing. So, post some historical revolver stuff. And, and then I'm doing a lot of work with Daryl Bulkey. He has Hardwired Integrated Tactical Shooting, or HITS, on Facebook. So if we do a class, it's usually there. You'll ping it there.
Oh.
So that's the 5 ways you can get a hold of me.
Okay. And if anybody was actually wanting to hear some training knowledge from you, I know that each year, the last couple of years, you've been teaching out at the Guardian Conference, which is this month. And that would be I haven't been to one of those yet, and I really want to try to in the next year or so, make a trip out to one of those.
Yeah, that one's coming up middle of the month here. I think what is today? Today's the 4th. So it's in like 11 days, 11 or 12 days. I can't remember. I got to be there a day early and stay through that Monday. So yeah, it's the 15th, 16th, 17th. So 11 days away. And that's the nice part about that conference. And I'll, if you don't mind me talking about it a little bit. Yeah. And this is not a shameless plug for Come Train With Me. We have a whole host of instructors, guys like Eric Gelhaus, who is a gun sight range master for like the last 20 years. He's written the gun sight red dot optics training protocols and a lot of that. Probably the most unknown and absolutely best trainers on the face of the planet. And I don't say that lightly. He is a friend of mine, but seriously, if you get a chance, he's got Cougar Mountain Solutions is the name of his company. So when he's not working at Gunsight, he goes on the road and teaches red dot, low light vehicle stuff. I mean, a lot of LEO centric stuff, but I went through his red dot instructor course, and that was probably one of the best investments I've ever made. And because it was a true instructor development. It wasn't just shoot a bunch of drills and go home and everybody high five. It was a lot of in-depth stuff. And he'll be there at the conference. So you have like 4 hours of access to the guy, or if you take 2 classes from him, like 8 hours of time that you can interact with him. Wayne Dobbs doesn't do a whole lot of open enrollment training anymore. He's got one coming up in Granbury, Texas in November, but he does very limited amount of access to that guy, and he'll be there. Of course, Riley Bowman, Mickey Shook, carry trainer. But the biggest thing I appreciate about that conference is breakfast, lunch, and on several nights, dinner is covered. So, we got sponsors that cater in a dinner like 2 of the 3 nights. You've got lunches delivered on site. Breakfast, they've got like a juice bar and, just snacks for breakfast. But, if you think about the logistics of going to a conference and, okay, I've got to pay for a place to stay, pay for how to get there, and I got to pay for chow, 9 meals, 10 meals while you're there. I mean, think of the cost savings of that.
Right.
And EDC Belt Company, we sell belts out there at a little discounted rate, and there's ammo for sale out there. I mean, it's the total kind of self-contained conference.
Yeah.
So I recommend it if you get a chance, and it's like, ages 21 to 80 and all points in between and all skill levels, and it covers a pretty broad base. And then next year I'm teaching at Rangemaster TacCon, but it's sold out in like 12 minutes this year. So
wow,
if you're not in on that one, you're not going to get on until 2024. And Tom invited me to teach there this year and then again next year. So I'll be doing a block there. And then I've got Big Tex Ordnance. If you're in the Texas area, October 21st, I'm doing a 1-day practical revolver skills course that, bring what you got. And it's going to be kind of just a broad brush overview of revolvers for 8 hours. And I think it's $225 with the range fee. Guy named Alex Sansone, the Suited Shootist, is hosting that, and he's doing all the ads and money and all that for me. So, and I've taught that class like twice for private gigs. I've never done it open enrollment. and I've always vetted all the students before I did it. And this time I got thrown a curveball, so I'm going to do my best to knock it over the fence. So.
Okay. You got anything, David? You want to ask?
I think I'm good.
Well, one of the questions that we are going to start asking this year for all of our guests, what's a hobby or something you do for relaxation? I would say away from your normal job and everyday routine, but since you're in that retirement but still working phase, what do you do for relaxation? What's your favorite thing to do?
Oh man, that's a bit of a loaded question, man. I really have grown fond of like traveling. I mean, that sounds kind of cliche, but for the last 25 years, traveling was kind of a mess for me, and I never really liked it. I don't guess that's a hobby because most of the traveling I'm doing is gun-centric stuff. So I try to build in some time there to do something else.
Right.
My dear friend Daryl Bulkey and I went to Lake Havasu back in January, and I was like, wow, I can walk around and not carry a gun and feel just fine. This is cool.
Yeah.
Other than that, like I play guitar. That's kind of one of my deals. And then, my gal and I, our favorite pastime is pick some eclectic restaurant or, fine dining establishment. And like once a month we try to go and like, okay, this is not something we would normally do on a Tuesday, but we're going to go to this real high end steakhouse and see what that's about. So that's, yeah, that's fun times. And I know it doesn't sound like a hobby, but it's just kind of a guilty pleasure of mine that we do. But
yeah, well, things to all of us are different. We're unique individuals, so we all have our own favorite thing that we like or that kind of gives us that reprieve from reality, I guess. And yeah, mine's listening to music, or even though I do the training, range therapy is always great.
Yeah, the range for me is a workout in business now. So it's not as much of a hobby. So I kind of look at going to the range as like going to the gym. And then I do some gunsmithing work. And I know like all those, only 2 of those are not gun centric, but I really enjoy like shutting the door on the shop. My dad and I have a little gunsmith shop. Shutting the door on the shop, turn the AC on, turn music up, and do something meaningful, customize a 1911 or work on a revolver or fix something that's been broken for 100 years. I mean, that's pretty rewarding. I've got a couple of, projects that I like to work on, or like I was telling you, I did Haney McMood handed me a 1931 Colt and says, can you put a cart barrel in this and do this and put this beaver tail and this hammer and these sights? And I was like, yeah, here we go. Do that. And that's pretty rewarding, especially, we test fired it in Georgia, and I was like, hey, it shoots really good and it works really well. And it just kind of resurrected this old gun, gave it a second life. So yeah, that kind of stuff is pretty fun.
Okay. All right. So, Brian, I appreciate you joining us and talking about revolvers, and I enjoyed the conversation and the time with you. And maybe we might have you back on a future podcast episode for another topic, or revisit this one.
Or the 1911s. Bring me back for 1911s, and it's the one thing I know more than anything else about. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And as always, y'all remember the motto: learn, train, and survive. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and the guest, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the podcast publisher, its affiliates, or any other entity. The information contained in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as medical, legal, or financial advice. The podcast publisher and its affiliates assume no responsibility for any liability, loss, or damage caused by the use of information contained in this podcast. Listeners are advised to consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based on the information contained in this podcast. Hi, this is Brian, host of the Armed Guardian podcast and owner of Blueberry Tactical and Training. While we were looking to find an official drink for both the company and the podcast, we searched for several different types of drinks, and we have come to find Blackout Coffee is a drink that we can put our trust into. It's a coffee with values. It's coffee that's more than just a coffee company. They're a purpose-driven company that acknowledges the people and the traditions that make our country great. They're known for supporting the traditional American values, military, first responders, and hardworking people all across America. Blackout Coffee was founded on the principles of conservative values. The founders believe in the importance of hard work, personal responsibility, family, respect, and traditional American values. So, Armed Guardian Podcast and Blueberry Tactical are proud to make Blackout Coffee our official drink for the podcast and our business. So, in the link below in our show notes, if you don't mind visiting, check out them. They also have teas and cocos that are available if you prefer those. But check them out. There's a link in the show notes, and there's also a coupon code for 10% off your first order. So check out Blackout Coffee and enjoy their drink.